kill or injure, conduct a mass shooting or an act of terrorism, a serious charge that she could end up in prison for 15 years. Reporting live in Lake
prison. Where are the free speech warriors here?
They're bought. They're bought by, Cantor Fitzgerald Acquisition Corp and different others of properties. Carl Bayer pointed out the threat wasn't any more egregious than one casually issued by members of the ruling class on a regular basis just last month. For example, incumbent President Donald Trump said of Rep. Liz Cheney, let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Now just ask that question to that cop that was on there saying this woman's not a child. Is Donald Trump a child? Like, how many times has Donald Trump made actual threats like that? No, he's not going to face $100,000.
This is definitely a double standard.
$100,000 bail. I mean, he could pay it, obviously. I would just say the deny, defend, depose thing, saying that to a health insurer, being taken as a threat, that could just be somebody simply saying, hey, you continue doing what you're doing to me. This is physics. And someone else, not necessarily me, might do it because guess what? It just fucking happened. And here's the thing. If private health insurance still exists in
like, I would expect them, if you say something like that, like, the cops might have a conversation with you, but like going to jail over this when she didn't actually make a threat, the CEOs feel threatened at the moment. So
10 years, none of us give a fuck how many CEOs get ground up over that 10 years because the actual violence being done is by that private health insurance system. And how long or how many
ground up? You don't mean physically, right?
We're not talking about a meat
turned out of the system.
We're not talking about Bob's Burgers. No,
I mean if like there's violence done again.
Did you know that the original Bob's Burgers, Bob and his family were cannibals? Like they were making the burgers out of people.
Them. That will be a lesser concern to me than the fact that private health insurance.
But they changed that because they thought it was too dark.
Concern. I don't like violence, but it is a lesser concern to me
yes.
than the concern that this system exists every day and kills tens of thousands of people by not allowing them to have health care. We have a working class that lives a decade less than these rich motherfuckers who get to say anything they want.
Yeah, and the reality is like how many times have, I don't know, people receive death threats, specifically women, I would say.
Elon Musk Twitter.
Or rape threats. I know I've gotten a bunch. I know a lot of other female creators have also received that kind of harassment. Are they immediately brought in front of a judge and held on a $100,000 bond like this woman is? Or is the real reason that our police is constructed as it is it's there to protect private property and it's there to protect business interests? And that's as obvious as it gets, just right in front of us right here. And specifically about like what constitutes a threat. Talia Levin made this point. There's no specificity about time or place or target. I mean, I guess when she said, "You're next," right? But she was on the phone with an anonymous representative, or "you people are next." So she didn't even say "you're next."
What that was told to her on that call is way more a problem to me than what she said in frustration in response to it.
Right. I think that's right.
Like, and anybody who can't understand that somebody can't say, hey, like, I am very frustrated here. I am confronting evil system, and I'm not even allowed to say, you might have it coming. Maybe that's the free speech America. I mean, how do we look at like China and gloat at all about like freedom of people to express themselves?
And I mean, also I just gotta say the threat. There's no immediacy to what she's saying. Like, you have it coming is not a threat.
No,
a threat.
It could be a good warning. Hey, look, I would never do anything like that, which I don't think she would have. I would vote to acquit 100.
I mean, look. I'm not saying that I feel like there's plenty of examples of people making more actionable sounding. Like, remember what Xander Hall said about Keffels? I feel like that had more like potential that was like a literal threat. Like, that's an example of somebody literally making a threat about someone's life, saying how they want to end that person's life, asking a friend where they could find that person, right? That's a threat. Like that's like it's not just I mean, what she said was, pretty hardcore, not gonna lie, but it wasn't a threat. It didn't imply a threat. It didn't denote a threat.
Every single charge placed at this woman. That could just be looked at as, hey, do you understand what you're doing to all of us? What kind of feedback do you need? How many elections do Republicans need to be corrupted by private insurance Democrats? Like, how much of these sorts of incidents does the mainstream press need to see where their audience is like, actually, I don't really give so much of a fuck about that. I'm more concerned with the evil system that everyone is being driven insane by. I'm more concerned about that still.
Lakeland PD has had issues in the past. I'm sure you're not surprised to hear that. But this is an injustice. And I mean, I'm sorry, but it's class warfare.
Yes.
That's what that is.
That's what that judge meant. And Ryan Grimm even made the point. Also, this is the same point I'm making, but
It's an overreaction, too. Like, and if the capitalist class thinks that this kind of shit is going to make the situation any better for them, they've got another thing coming. And that is me quoting classic rock lyrics, not any kind of threat, okay?
this mom never said herself was going to attack an insurance executive. She said that if they continue treating people like that, somebody will, which is just her prediction, not a threat. It's similar to what
It was a prediction. It was a prediction. I made a prediction, chat.
said, and Warren was right. You can only beat people down for so long. It's not a threat. It's just a fact.
And who was really harmed here by this supposed threat? Who was harmed? Nobody, right? Because a crime, there's supposed to be some sort of harm. The only person that was harmed in this instance is the woman who is now going to lose even more money, right? It already began.
Think of her family.
Right. It already began with her getting a claim denied. And so then she made that case. And now she has to go through a protracted legal fight, which will also immiserate her because the state decided to take the side of a corporation because of some aside that she made. And like, I'm not even going to blame the person working on that phone line. I'm sure there's some sort of corporate directive right now from every health insurer like Blue Cross Blue Shield. But that's why the system is corrupted. And why we need to have a serious conversation about eliminating the industry, about having a single payer system. Even a public option is a prerequisite to entering into the Democratic primary in 2028 is how I view it.
There was one victim on that call, and it was not the motherfucker who was denying her claim. Look, that's just a foot shoulder, similar to Brian Thompson, actually, because guess what? It doesn't matter that he was no angel, which reporting is coming out and saying he wasn't. He could have been Mahatma Gandhi, and he is still a healthcare CEO driven by profits in an industry that should not exist. So, but there's one victim on that call, and that was the person who was unnecessarily denied claim.
Yep. David from Milwaukee. I was in high school when Columbine happened, and over the past 20 years, I have seen almost a monthly basis school shootings happen. I'm not sorry at all about some corporate thug getting his comeuppance. I've never seen any of these rich schools cry this hard about any school shooting in the past 20 years, or let alone like the direct results of their actions as healthcare executives.
It's not my problem.
Yeah.
Buy more security, all you freaks.
Omega, this show has been singing them notes and giving me such catharsis. My late mother-in-law had to fight like fuck to get dentures from her insurance and Medicaid post-Obama when she lost her teeth after suffering from diabetes and arthritis. After my in-laws suffered from a loss of my wife's father, they financially suffered hard before and after, miss me with the responsibility talk. They don't know our needs. Gerald from New Orleans is either going to be Medicare for all or deny, defend, depose.
True. I'm sorry. There's no way around this. Like, this has to be addressed, confronted, and we have to move on past these companies.
Madman Sam, you hear domestic abuse cases all the time when the woman calls the cops because their partner repeatedly threatens to kill them, and the cops say that they can't do nothing.
Of course.
Until they actually try to kill them on effing belief.
So what I mean is I feel like there's a bunch of examples of people making more specific and actionable and threats that and the end result them being them saying, well, it wasn't a real enough threat to do anything.
Believable. That's exactly correct. Number 13, time for us all to go to prison too. F this. I will say deny, defend, depose in some context if that's in my future. Timothy Chalamet.
It's going up in graffiti everywhere. Deny, defend, depose.
It is. Timothy Chalamet look like Biden should pardon her.
Biden's a fucking crook.
Okay, that is Brianna Boston, who seems to be like, look, like I said, it's some pretty hardcore shit what she said. But I feel like it's not proportional, right? Her actually going to jail over this is not proportional, especially considering all the other like more clear and present threats made that are not ending in somebody going to jail. Right? It's almost like specifically because the CEOs feel at threat right now that they're treating this as a threat when it's not.
Joining us now is former federal prosecutor Nima Ramani. Nima, always great to have you here. What made the district attorney the charges to first-degree murder? What sort of evidence?
Elizabeth, I'm not surprised that we're seeing these terrorism charges and first-degree murder charges, but it is a risky move. And terrorism requires either an intent to intimidate the public or influence government policy. And New York has a...
So he's being charged with terrorism because his act is being seen as having a political intent behind it.
A more narrow first-degree murder law than most states. So it does result in an increased potential.
Oh, so the first degree is the thing that's risky, not the... I was thinking they were going to say the terrorist charge was the one that was more iffy.
It's 20 to 25 years without the possibility of parole for first-degree murder, and only 15 with the possibility of parole for second-degree murder. So I understand why Bragg's office did this, but now it raises the question as to why Mangione did this. And if I'm prosecuting this case, I want to keep all that evidence out because that raises the possibility of jury sympathy and potentially even jury nullification.
Right. The case he's going to have to build is going to be he was on a crusade against these ghoulish healthcare insurance companies. And guess what? A sizable number of Americans are frustrated and furious with their insurance companies.
Yes, so it raises the element of why, and you have to get into Mangione's intent and his history. So it brings in a lot of evidence that otherwise could have been excluded. There's also one additional wrinkle here. Terrorism is also a federal crime, whereas most murders are not. So now there's the possibility that the Trump-appointed Attorney General comes in and takes this case away from Alvin Bragg. And we know how the president-elect feels about the Manhattan District Attorney. So there might be a federal component as well now that we're seeing these terrorism charges.
Yeah, we also know he's condemned what Luigi Mangione allegedly did, so he has strong feelings about it. You know, I'm curious, the DA, in announcing the terrorism, talked about the fact that it was meant to inspire fear. And we just heard the police commissioner, really denounce these wanted posters that went up around Manhattan. And many of the nation's top chief executives are certainly afraid right now. There's a deck of playing cards circulating online with the faces of other CEOs. They could be targeted as well.
They could be. And I've been doing this a long time, more than 2 decades. I have never ever seen an accused murderer with this much sympathy, this much support on traditional and social media. And it's just something that we may never see again. So obviously in a criminal case, you have to get 12 out of 12 jurors unanimously to convict. And this case presents a very real possibility of a holdout juror, a stealth juror that tries to get on this panel to send a message to executives, the healthcare industry. So again, we're really playing with fire.
A stealth juror?
Here, as far as the prosecution is concerned, by adding...
Is this like a thing? Is this a known concept?
Charges.
Do you think that support that Luigi Mangione currently, I hate to say it, enjoys among some quarters of America, will fade once more information comes out about him and his background?
We like assassinate his character or something like that, maybe, so that possibly the jury wouldn't feel any sort of sympathy towards this man, and the chance of nullification would be nil.
I mean, you know, this was a child of privilege. He was born into a family worth reportedly tens of millions, if not $100 million. Ivy League educated, private schools, you know, quit his job to go, you know, practice yoga and read books because he could afford to. Versus Brian Thompson, the man he's accused of killing,
Oh no, chat. Where is this going? Where is this going? Is this like the CEO is the real working class hero? Is that what she's getting at? Is that what she's trying to imply? Like, if we could just flip your sympathy from the alleged insurance adjuster to the CEO who had a family, and for instance, you hate college kids, right? This was a college kid. This was a college kid.
did he have to present to the grand jury?
He was seen to have eaten avocado toast at one time, which is also, I don't know.
Elizabeth, I'm not surprised that we're seeing these terrorism charges and first-degree murder charges, but it is a risky move. And terrorism...
Well, I mean, them calling it terrorism shows that they are terrorized.
requires either an intent...
And that's why Breonna Boston went to jail, because she scared them. This shit scares them.
intimidate the public or influence government policy. And New York has a more narrow first-degree murder law than most states. So it does result in an increased potential penalty. It's 20 to 25 years without the possibility of parole for first-degree murder, and only 15 with the possibility of parole for second-degree murder. So I understand why Bragg's office did this, but now it raises the question as to why Mangione did this. And if I'm prosecuting this case, I want to keep all that evidence out, because that raises the possibility.
What the fuck? Did I accidentally put this back to the beginning of the... I'm sorry.
Because it was so peaceful up here, but now there are freaking communist invading radicals.
I'm not saying I agree with it, but in Mangione, you have someone who's rich, who's smart, who's good looking, and is now famous. So I'm not surprised that he has this fan club, and he's a hero of sorts. So he is somewhat of a sympathetic defendant. Again, not saying I agree with it, but he does present a real potential problem at trial. And now we're going to get into all of this, and the evidence that's come out, his manifesto, his back surgery, his experimenting with psychedelics, it does appeal to a certain percentage of the population.
Oh, it's the Joe Rogan demographic.
And now all that's fair game by charging the terrorism and trying to escalate this to first-degree murder, whereas could have been a simple case. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there, Elizabeth.
Yeah, hey, super quick, he's hired an expensive, pretty well-known defense attorney here in New York City. Word is she's going to drop fighting extradition. There's a hearing in Pennsylvania on Thursday afternoon. He could be on his way back to New York City by Thursday night.
I think that's a smart move by his lawyer, Karen Friedman. She knows that extradition, especially from state to state, is really just a question of identity. Yeah. Are you the person that's named in the warrant? So it's not worth fighting. She's going to focus her attention on those New York.
Oh my God. No. I see what's happening. That's why it froze. Oh my God, chat. I'm sorry. I saw your, I saw chat saying that it's frozen. I couldn't tell why. It's because I had two versions of it open. Anyway.
The person that's named in the warrant, so it's not worth fighting. She's going to focus her attention on those New York charges.
Thanks so much for watching.
Okay, so on that point, there were a number of relatively strange articles written. This is one of them. It's a guest essay from the New York Times. United Health Group CEO. The healthcare system is flawed. Let's fix it. So there's a few of these, right? There's one arguing, I don't know if this is the one arguing that the CEO was the true working class hero in this situation. I feel like there's been a number of articles written that are actually kind of funny. Let's see. I was sent this one, right? As Brian Thompson's family, friends, and colleagues mourn his killing, we are bearing a grief and sadness we will carry for the rest of our lives. Grief for the family he leaves behind, and grief for the brilliant, kind man who was working to make healthcare better for everyone. The dear CEO. We greatly appreciate the enormous outpouring of support for Brian, who ran our health insurance business, United Healthcare, as well as our wider company, which I lead. Yet we also are struggling to make sense of the unconscionable act and the vitriol that has been directed at our colleagues who have been barraged by threats. No employees, be they people who answer customer calls or nurses who visit patients in their homes, should have to fear for their and their loved ones' safety. The people at United Health Group are nurses, doctors, patient and client advocates, technologists, and more. They all come to work each day to provide critical health services for millions of Americans in need. We know the health system does not work as well as it should, and we understand people's frustrations with it. But no one would design a system like the one we have, and no one did. It's a patchwork built over decades. Our mission is to help make it work better. We are willing to partner with anyone. We are always have healthcare providers, employers, patients, pharmaceutical companies, governments, and others to find ways to deliver high quality care at lower costs. Clearly, we are not there yet. We understand and share the desire to build the health system that works better for everyone. That is the purpose of our organization. Healthcare is both intensely personal and very complicated, and the reasons behind coverage decisions are not well understood. We share some of the responsibility for that. Together with employers, governments, and others who pay for care, we need to improve how we explain what insurance covers and how decisions are made. Behind each decision lies a comprehensive and continually updated body of clinical evidence focused on achieving the best health outcomes and ensuring patient safety. While the health system is not perfect, every corner of it is filled with people who try to do the best for those who they serve. Brian, the CEO, is one of those people. He was raised in the same Iowa farmhouse as his mom. His dad spent more than 40 years unloading trucks in grain elevators. BT, as we knew him, worked farm jobs as a kid and fished in the gravel pit with his brother. He never forgot, here we go, the working class hero. Never forgot where he came from because it was the needs of people who live in places like Jewell, Iowa. Oh, he was from not the coast. He was from the middle of the country, and therefore he's just like you, and he's just a working class CEO, really, is what we're dealing with here, folks. That he considered the first in finding important ways to improve care. When a colleague proposed a new idea to Brian, he would always ask, who would want this for your own family? If not, would you want this for your own family? If not, end of discussion. Brian was never content with the status quo. That's why he pushed us to build dedicated teams to help the sickest people navigate the health systems. It's why he fought for preventative health and quality health outcomes rather than simply adding ever more tests and procedures. Oh, that's it. He wanted you to have preventative care. So yeah, no, not the, you don't need the tests or the procedures, right? You don't need the coverage, right? You need, oh my God. Okay. Well, this is just keeps getting better. He believes decisions about healthcare should start with individuals and champion plans in which consumers could see costs and coverage up front so they could decide what's best for them and their families. The ideas he advocated were aimed at making healthcare more affordable, more transparent, more intuitive, more compassionate, and more human. That's Brian's legacy, one we will carry forward by continuing our work to make healthcare system work better for everyone. Oh my God, they doubled down. They doubled down. That's what we're dealing with here.
This news is funded by viewers like you. Please support our work at democracynow.org/give.
We turn now to look more at Luigi Mangione, the 26-year-old accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson as he walked to a shareholders conference in New York City on December 4th. Mangione remains in custody in Pennsylvania as he fights extradition to New York. He's hired the prominent lawyer Karen Friedman Agnifilo to represent him. She is the former second in command of the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. A defense fund for Luigi Mangione has already raised over $100,000 in the latest sign that he's become a folk hero to some. On Sunday, Senator Bernie Sanders appeared on Meet the Press and talked about why there is so much anger directed at the health insurance industry.
What you have seen rising up is people's anger at a health insurance industry which denies people the health care that they desperately need while they make billions and billions of dollars in profit. So killing anybody, shooting somebody in the back who's the father of two is outrageous. It is unacceptable. Nobody should applaud it. I know Senator Warren did not. But I think what we need to ask ourselves when we talk about health care is why we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people, why we have a life expectancy which is significantly lower than in other countries, why working class people die 5 to 10 years shorter than the people on top.
We're joined now by the investigative journalist Ken Klippenstein. He's broken several stories on the killing of the United Healthcare CEO. He was the first to publish Luigi Mangione's full manifesto. He also obtained leaked internal documents detailing United Healthcare PR campaign in response to the shooting. We welcome you back to Democracy Now!, Ken. When we say that you were the first to publish the manifesto, you weren't the first to get your hands on the manifesto. In fact, most media had their hands on it. Explain how you made that decision to publish it when they were withholding it.
That's exactly right. The major media outlets from the New York Times to the Post, CNN, ABC, all had their hands on this document, were sitting on it, sharing it with themselves socially, which I know from my friends at these various outlets, but refused to provide it to the general public. And so when I obtained the document and read through it, I didn't see any reason not to publish it. And so I went ahead, did that in response to what I saw as media paternalism at its worst. The judgment that this is safe for us to read, but it's not okay for the public to read.
Ken, in that manifesto, what do you think were some key portions that were most newsworthy that the public deserved to know about?
The overwhelming focus on the healthcare system as an institution. That's not, of course, to say that it's okay to kill somebody. I think that goes almost without saying to advance those goals. But to see in this the fact that it wasn't just a completely random act of violence, as in fact the major media repeatedly asserted it was.
So the important aspect of this, oh my gosh, the important aspect of this story is that of what is called social murder.
Up here, but now there are freaking communist invading radicals.
We recognize somebody having their life ended by a man, pulling up behind them with a gun, with a ghost gun, with a silencer. We recognize that as, as murder. But what we don't recognize murder is the effects of the healthcare system that denies people the care that in many cases they paid for. That kind of denial of care is never seen as murder. It's seen as the cost of doing business, I guess. And in a system like capitalism, where the incentive is to all meet at the lowest common denominator, to sort of a race to the bottom in terms of cutting costs, right? Which to a healthcare company includes payouts, it includes covering things. That's their cost. So, capitalism, the incentives are to reduce the cost and increase the price. That's going to be fundamentally antithetical to your interests as a consumer of medical insurance, much like the interest of your boss. The interest of your employer is fundamentally at contradiction with your own interests. So this is a funny little thing about capitalism. And guess whose interests win out in our capitalist system? Not yours.
If you look at, there's one particularly egregious case by CNN in how they were trying to paraphrase the contents of the document, again, without providing the underlying document to the public to come to their own conclusions, saying that in this are the rantings and ravings of a crazy person. When you read through that document, which wasn't that long, but it's very clear from it that this individual was motivated by grievances about the healthcare system. And so that's why it's important to get that out to the public. I think that if you ask these major media outlets why they didn't do that, the explanations fall along roughly two lines.
Yeah, they'll call it like some kind of social responsibility, and basically compare it to a situation where, like, you had a person do a mass shooting and their manifesto is some racist thing, right? That it's inappropriate to publish to report on the manifesto for that reason, because it's akin to reading out the manifesto of a mass shooter, right? But the fact that they look at that as comparable is actually very telling.
One is that it's not safe for the public to have this. It might inspire copycat killings. I think that's similar to saying, violent video games are going to cause children to shoot up schools. I'm very skeptical of that. But in addition to that, what I found in the course of my reporting on that document was that there were deals that were struck with law enforcement, which furnished this document to various media outlets, in which they were essentially blackmailed into not releasing these records because they didn't want to alienate the sources that they depended on for not just this document, but other exclusives.
You also looked at how United Healthcare responded to the dam breaking on the immense anger directed at the healthcare industry after the killing of Brian Thompson. You've said the media is largely tone deaf. If you can go over the second information that you received, which was the internal documents of United Healthcare responding to this assassination and to the anger in particular at the healthcare industry that it unleashed.
Yeah, over the course of reporting on this story, I've interviewed probably a dozen United Healthcare employees who themselves were shocked and horrified at how out of touch not just the public-facing response, but the internal messaging to employees about this was. Something I didn't realize was the extent to which people working in these call centers, right up to management, not just low-level grunts, themselves are upset about having to deny claims and the way in which the industry conducts itself, and they felt as though this is something I heard repeatedly in my interviews with them. To not acknowledge that as at least a part of this story is to overlook and to misunderstand what this is all about. And so they're getting their own internal messaging saying, everything's fine. Much of this changed around Thursday or Friday when the New York Times chose to publish an op-ed by the CEO of United Healthcare's parent company, United Health Group, CEO by the name of Andrew Whitty. And it was only at that point, just a few days ago, that the tone sort of shifted towards I feel your
Thank you, Anonymous.
pain. I understand that healthcare is far from perfect. But prior to that, there was very little in the way of recognition and acknowledgement of the public's anger, not just on the part of United Healthcare, but on the part of the news media as well.
And let's talk a little about how the other aspects that the corporate media has missed in this story. You delved into the legal problems facing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson before he was killed. Talk about the Hollywood Firefighters Pension Fund and the lawsuit that they had going.
Yeah, so in May, the Hollywood Firefighters Pension Fund filed a lawsuit against United Healthcare, the deceased United Healthcare CEO, alleging that he had engaged in insider trading and fraud in relation to a Justice Department investigation that was recently launched into the company for allegedly anti-competitive practices, which the then CEO Brian Thompson was aware of, had knowledge of, and did not disclose to either the public or investors, and ended up selling, I think, over $10 million of his own private, personally held stock in the company before disclosing that to the public, which has the effect of benefiting him, but hurting the rest of the shareholders, which aren't just rich investors. That's also pension funds and retirement funds who don't have the benefit of that knowledge to make decisions on.
And Ken Klippenstein, if you can talk about all that has happened since the killing of Brian Thompson, the response with wanted online posters of other CEOs in New York, those posters appearing, and your response to what that means. And then in the corporate media, while they've been forced, because there's such a tremendous backlash against the health insurance industry now, to address what's happening, there is little discussion, and certainly United Healthcare is not talking about it, of universal health care.
That's exactly right. And I speculate that it is the absence of discourse around our healthcare system that fed into the rage we're seeing now. I did a story during the election on the two conventions for the major nominees, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, and noticed that between the two of them, in their convention speeches, they mentioned the word healthcare twice. So for the first time in my adult life, going back to Obama, going back to the 2016 elections where Senator Bernie Sanders put healthcare front and center at that election, and then most recently in 2020, when Biden even gave a nod to the public option, this is the first election in my adult memory that I can recall healthcare not being at the center of the debate. And when you do something,
Yeah, wasn't one of the first things that Kamala Harris gave up her stance in favor of Medicare for all? They panel tested it and it didn't do good, so they jettisoned it. They were like, no, we're not going to do that.
Like that, it doesn't surprise me that the public is angry, not just at the silence on the part of politicians, but the sense that things are not going to change. And to miss that as part of this story is just malpractice, because that is the backdrop against which this entire event took place, and I think is informing a lot of the frustration and rage that people have, not necessarily at the CEO as an individual, but the CEO as a personification of the healthcare system that people feel this episode represents.
And Ken, you've also noted that within the healthcare industry, the employees, for instance, of United Health have deep concerns as well about how the company is functioning in regards to the people it insures. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to people who describe hanging up with people trying to get claims filled, sobbing at the sense of sadness and empathy for the situation in which they are, and they're just having to base their decisions off of a structured list of rules that are decided on high that they have no say in, and that was the biggest shock to me in reporting on this, was realizing how little daylight there is between many of the employees that I talk to and the general frustration you're hearing from the rest of the public. If you read the New York Times and Washington Post, they'll tell you, they've repeatedly run stories saying, oh, employees are feel as though they're being, treated unfairly by the public opinion. It's not really health insurance companies' fault. It's, maybe hospitals and doctors, that kind of thing. Certainly the dozen or so people I've talked to, I'm able to identify very little in the way of disagreement that they have with some of the most angry sentiments we're seeing expressed on the part of the general public.
Finally, Ken, the MAGA right lionizing, this is going back in time, Kyle Rittenhouse, who, when he was 17, fatally shot 2 men and injured one with a semi-automatic rifle during racial justice protests in Kenosha in Wisconsin, where the state you're in right now in 2020 becomes a cause célèbre among U.S. conservatives during the trial, continues to be lionized by gun supporters, among others. Your response to those who say the left is doing the same with Mangione now, and that no matter what the cause,
Is Destiny and a comment about buckets full of some substance, is that coming next? Like, is that how it's going to formulate itself? If you don't know, Destiny had a debate with Sam Cedar where he said that if Kyle Rittenhouse were black, that Sam would be ingesting buckets full of his fluids rather than criticizing him. So, yeah, I don't know.
the extrajudicial assassination of anyone is reprehensible, Ken.
Yes, of course it is. I think that practically, I hope that goes without saying. As to the political dimensions to this, I would encourage people to just look at the manifesto, look at the wealth of social media posts that are available to us to go through it and read and get a sense of the alleged shooter's political ideology. And I think what will become clear is that this is not a partisan issue, just as healthcare being a serious problem in this country is not a partisan issue. I think that comes through very clearly in both the manifesto that I published and in the public response too. I mean, even just, I mean, this is anecdotal, but even just on a personal level, the people that I've heard express frustration in the wake of this, they're not saying, oh, this is all, Obama's fault or Biden's fault or Trump's fault. They are angry at the corporations, which, in the case of United Healthcare, spend huge sums of money lobbying the federal government on both sides. And you can see this in their campaign, in their political contribution disclosures, lobbying both parties to keep the system that we have in place and to make sure that the problems we have are not ameliorated.
Ken Klippenstein, I want to thank you so much for being with us. Investigative reporter, have broken a number of stories on United Healthcare CEO killing. We'll link to your...
And gotten banned more than a few times from X as well.
Luigi Mangione, the alleged murderer of Brian Thompson, the late CEO of US health insurer United Healthcare, well, you'd have to have taken an impromptu excursion to the Andromeda Galaxy if this particular story has passed you by. Now, to avoid any misunderstanding, when he claims I'm violating the law or YouTube rules glorifying or inciting violence, I don't support killing anyone. I know, bombshell, right? I think anyone who follows me already got that particular gist. So it's been interesting to see many of the people who are focused on this particular killing as a particularly obscene outrage are often the very same people who have actively advocated the industrial level slaughter of the Palestinian people for the last 14 months. An article in The Atlantic, whose editor incidentally is a former Israeli prison guard, is headlined, "Decivilization may already be underway," with a subheading, "The brazen murder of a CEO in Midtown Manhattan and the cheering reaction to his execution amounts to a blinking and blaring warning signal for a society that has become already too inured to bloodshed." Well, as one Twitter user put it, surely it suggests more in the way of decivilization when the world's leading genocidaire can hardly get through a speech to Congress for all the standing ovations. That's referring to how Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, who is a wanted man for war crimes and crimes against humanity by the International Criminal Court, was loudly cheered and serenaded by US politicians when he addressed them after having exterminated tens of thousands of Palestinians. Indeed, if we're talking about decivilization, literally decivilized Gaza by wiping civilization out. If we're discussing killing machines, more to the point, that surely includes how the privatised US healthcare system, and as a socialist, it's systems I'm interested in rather than individuals, has condemned so many Americans to death and suffering. What 19th century German philosopher Friedrich Engels would have called social murder, which is what has clearly driven the response, which we're going to look at, to Luigi Mangione's violent act. Luigi Mangione. Let's get the pronunciation right. A lot of discussion has focused on, well, people lusting after him. That's been helped along by, I think, admittedly pretty buff shirtless pictures, and the truly bizarre decision of the Pennsylvania police to keep releasing mugshots of him. That has clearly fueled that as well. Some of those comments veering into pornographic territory. Here's one example of this on TikTok.
My husband, which is Luigi Mangione, has been eating a lot of McDonald's lately, so I decided to celebrate his Italian heritage and make a pasta puttanesca. I simmered together some tomatoes, onions, spices, Kalamata olives, and then pureed and added some flaked tuna. I then served it with pasta, a little bit of grated Parmesan, and this was really satisfying and hit the spot, just like my husband.
Really?
What I'm interested in, with my strokey chin writer hat on, is what could be called the Luigi Mangione phenomenon. He has become celebrated on social media in a way which almost never happens with killers. I mean, that's not surprising. Killers, not generally hero number one in society. This is certainly not like other killings. Not most killings, certainly. Previous statistics from the FBI showed most Americans who were killed by someone they know. They also showed 42% were killed during arguments. That's what happens, I'm afraid, if you've got lots of guns. People get angry, spur of the moment, they shoot each other in some cases. While another 23% were in circumstances such as rape, robbery, or burglary. So, not the same, clearly, as this particular circumstance. If we're going by what is officially defined as terrorism, the figures show it's far-right extremists who've committed by far the most ideologically motivated homicides compared to far-left or radical Islamist extremists. I'm using the term far-left as described in the official statistics, with 227 such attacks since the 90s compared to 42 attacks by those who are termed far-left. Now, this is not, it should be emphasised, a quote-unquote far-left attack. It's quite interesting, isn't it, that someone who does not have the, let's say, normal profile of a killer, how they become a killer. When that happens, that's interesting in of itself. When somebody just doesn't have the sort of history you would expect. And someone who is not actually a leftist in any meaningful sense at all, from what we can see from social media. He seems like the sort of guy on a dating app like Hinge to select moderate from the drop-down box. A sort of tech bro, I guess. He's someone whose friends have come out to laud him on a human level. One of them, Tracy Mowell, posted this clip of him.
This is an update. We found mochi ice cream. We found mochi ice cream. Mango baby.
She wrote alongside it, Luigi Mangione is probably the most Google keyword today. But before all of this, for a while, it was also the only name whose FaceTime calls I would pick up. He was one of my absolute best, closest, most trusted friends. He was also the only person who, at 1 a.m. on a work day, in this video, agreed to go to the store with drunk me to look for mochi ice cream. Another friend posted a picture of them together with a caption, "He's not a monster. I can't put into words on how worried I am for you right now." They have this story all upside down. He seems to have been an athletic frat boy from a pretty gilded background who academically excelled and who was well liked, no prior evidence of violence, studied computer science at the University of Pennsylvania, who was into making computer games. What we do know is that, as the Daily Beast put it, he was laid off by a Californian car resale site in 2023 and dealt with debilitating back pain requiring surgery, that he was sometimes bedridden, which one friend said was heinous because of the giant screws needed. An x-ray of his back with those screws can be seen adorning his Twitter header, which was suspended for a little while. He's been reported to have been an active Reddit user, often posting in Reddit communities about spinal pain. Quite a key point, clearly. he said, according to, this is quoted in Forbes, when my spondy went bad on me last year, 23 male, it was completely devastating as a young athletic person. The spondy, I had to Google that, refers to a bone in your spine. He also posted, keep trying different surgeons. Nobody will operate on my... This is recommending to someone else, clearly. Keep trying different surgeons. Nobody will operate on my back until I'm at least 40 is nonsense coming from a medical professional who lacks perspective. Tell them you are, quote unquote, unable to work / do your job. We live in a capitalist society. I found that the medical industry responds to these keywords far more urgently than you describing unbearable pain and how it's impacting your quality of life. Now, that is one of following is undeniable, including amongst his fellow inmates. And while I think it's fair to say we know a lot of...
So, I think that refers to is it a Newsmax clip where they're outside of the prison and somehow the prisoners are watching that cable news show? And as they, ask them questions, they respond, and you could hear them.
Convicts will get hassle in prison. I think it's clear it's not going to apply to this guy. Let's listen to this outside the prison.
Oh, here we go.
On the US cable show News Nation.
Why did I think it was Newsmax? Somehow, News Nation is different.
The US drag queen Aquaria tweets, hold up Joe Biden, I see what you've done for Hunter, and I think the American people would like to request one small final favour, please. Another tweets, we finally have someone to replace all those Christopher Columbus statues with. Christopher Columbus, of course, being responsible for far more murders than Luigi Mangione. While right-wing commentators are outraged, the headline for Zoe Strimple's piece in The Telegraph speaks for itself. Luigi Mangione's disgusting Gen Z fan club makes me fear for our society's future. They really don't like young people at Telegraph. She has millions of salivating over the alleged assassin of Brian Thompson in a disgusting display of our society's disintegration. Well, perhaps the best example of the, let's say, differing approaches to outrage came from Fox News. Listen to this.
We'll dig into it later. The Instagram posts from nutbag people, which I was sent in the commercial break earlier, crazy.
Chat, that's the #1 news channel in the United States. Fox News is fucking surreal. Fox News is something out of a lizard scene in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. There's something's wrong with the entire fucking culture of Fox News. The fact that, oh my God, what was his name? David Frum, when they brought him on Morning Joe to talk about Pete Hegseth, he was like, Pete Hegseth is too drunk to be on Fox and Friends, which is a very low bar to right. In other words, that, drinking is fairly normalized, at Fox and Friends, if not Fox News, writ large. But yeah, it's a strange place.
He's cute. And people celebrating this. This is a sickness. Honestly, it's so disappointing.
There's definitely a sickness going around.
But I guess we shouldn't be surprised. Gentlemen, thank you so much. And up next, the other big news out of New York, Daniel Penny. A lot of people think he's a hero. And tonight, he's not guilty. My take next.
Oh my God. Perfect. There you go. This is how twisted Fox News is. Right? Oh my God, it's really weird that people feel somewhat sympathetic towards this guy, but then we'll talk about the great hero that killed a man on a subway.
Daniel Penny there, of course, is the former Marine who was acquitted of fatally choking a homeless man.
It's so backwards.
On the New York City subway. The fact is, the US healthcare system, dominated by private healthcare insurers who exist to turn the most basic human needs into an excuse for profits. They kill people and they inflict terrible suffering. That system does. And it is the system, which is why this killing has, let's just say, struck a chord amongst a significant number of Americans. Let's read the leaked manifesto of Luigi Mangione, posted in full on the Substack of the top-notch US journalist Ken Klippenstein. To the feds, I'll keep this short because I do respect what you do for our country. To save you a lengthy investigation, I state plainly that I wasn't working with anyone. This was fairly trivial, some elementary social engineering, basic CAD, a lot of patience. The spiral notebook, if present, has some straggling notes and to-do lists that illuminate the gist of it.
Is a CAD in reference to the ghost gun?
My tech is pretty locked down because I work in engineering, so probably not much info there. I do apologise for any strife or traumas, but it had to be done. Frankly, these parasites simply had it coming. A reminder, the US has the #1 most expensive healthcare system in the world, yet we rank roughly number 42 in life expectancy. United is the...
I mean, there we go. That's more, wonky than I expected to hear in a manifesto of a healthcare assassin, but there we go.
Decipherable, largest company in the US by market cap, behind only Apple, Google, Walmart. It has grown and grown, but has our life expectancy? No, the reality is these indecipherable have simply gotten too powerful and they continue to abuse our country for immense profit because the American public has allowed them to get away with it. Obviously, the problem is far more complex, but I do not have the space, and frankly, I do not pretend to be the most qualified person to lay out the full argument. But many have illuminated the corruption and greed, e.g. Rosenthal, Moore, decades ago, and the problems simply remain. It is not an issue of awareness at this point, but clearly power games at play. Evidently, I am the first to face it with such brutal honesty. Well, I mean, he's clearly a very smart kid, isn't he? Not to sound patronising there. As a geriatric millennial to a significantly younger American. I mean, he's intelligent. He's got insight. 51% of Americans have a very or somewhat negative view of the healthcare industry, with 31% opting for very or somewhat positive, while 62% correctly believe all Americans getting healthcare is the responsibility of the federal government, with 36% disagreeing. And the failure of the US...
Yeah, what polls were Kamala's people looking at that told her that people were not behind Medicare for all?
Very or somewhat positive, while 62% correctly believe all...
Wait, I just want to see when this flipped. Like, since 2016, most people have looked at healthcare as being the responsibility of the government. What's the other one? The other poll? All right, so that's more like since, I don't know, 2021. Most Americans have a negative view of the healthcare industry. And I mean, like, it's... So what, there was like years between, it looks like 2019 and 2021, where there was somewhat positive. What's the predominant opinion and
Americans have a very or somewhat negative view of that.
That's weird. So it like starts before COVID and it ends before
healthcare industry, with 31% opting for very or somewhat positive, while 62% correctly believe all Americans getting healthcare is the responsibility of the federal government, with 36% disagreeing. And the failure of the US to have universal healthcare is, of course, a scandal. The bullets used by the bullets allegedly used, he's an alleged killer, by Luigi Mangione were reportedly inscribed with deny, depose and defend, words well known by Americans associated with refusals to offer healthcare by health insurance companies. The US healthcare system is wasteful and inefficient, requiring a huge bureaucracy, money which could be better spent on, for example, providing decent healthcare. As the National Women's Law Centre put it back in May 2023, refusals to provide healthcare threaten the health and lives of patients nationwide. Back in 2020, it was revealed that as much as a quarter of the American population were delaying getting the medical help they needed because of surging costs, and that clearly kills Americans. A significant number of those will die prematurely because of that. Look at this TikTok of the parent of a terminally ill 4-year-old child, which fleshes out where I think some of the emotional response is coming from.
Oh my God, how is... Yeah, you definitely can't play music on a live stream. Here, I'm gonna read this. Where's your compassion for our exec's family? Oh, we just read that. Real things insurance companies have said to me about my terminally ill 4-year-old. Yes, it does meet our criteria as listed for medically necessary, and it's just not included in your plan. There's no clinical evidence that this equipment is beneficial for children with this condition. There are less than 50 kids in the world with this condition. Would not accept similar conditions as sufficient evidence. Not everything someone needs to live qualifies as medically necessary. Yo. Real things that this person's insurance company said about their mentally ill 4-year-old. Or their, sorry, terminally ill.
In different ways, which can be seen in particularly stark terms in the more unrestrained capitalism of the United States. We've discussed the mass killing of people abroad, facilitated by politicians, legitimised by media outlets, and the mass killing of people at home by depriving them of their most basic and fundamental needs because profit is seen as a higher priority than people's lives and their well-being. And of course, healthcare is at the heart of that. Now, the left believes in mass movements which use collective power to transform societies, rather than lopping off rich individuals at the top. It is objectively true that this killing has certainly raised attention about the horrors of the US healthcare system. Whether it now ends up as a net saver of lives because of that, well, that remains to be seen. It is true that in our profoundly unequal and broken societies, if we fail to address the catastrophic distribution of wealth and power and rights with collective movements which...
Yeah, so, I mean, look, seeing what capitalism does to our healthcare puts us in really stark relief, because in that situation, it becomes a legit life or death matter. But the truth is, this isn't just about healthcare. Healthcare is not the only item in the hierarchy of needs that has been commodified, that has been enclosed, and that has been, you know, monopolized by there's hardly a thing that you could find that capitalism touches that doesn't have the same kind of corrupting touch from capitalism. Whether it's our electoral system, whether it is housing.
If your wins, then I think this sort of violence will become more common. I want to hear your thoughts on this one. I'll be fascinated to read them, actually, to be honest. So I will read every single comment in response. Please like and subscribe.
That's a lot of comments. Owen. Okay, so I wanted to look at this really quickly. This is from a week or so ago. This is Moist Critical, actually.
I've talked about tons of evil companies and industries over the years, but the one I want to talk about today makes Umbrella Corp from Resident Evil look like Weenie Hut Jr. Health insurance. Now,
wait, what is Weenie? Is Weenie Hut Jr. like one of those mall kiosks or something? What is Weenie Hut Jr.?
Now, I've ranted and raved about health insurance on stream quite a few times, way before the big thing that happened recently. And I'll just be clear up front that I'm not here to talk too much about Brian Thompson getting banished to the Shadow Realm. I'm here to talk mainly about health insurance itself and how corrupt and malicious it is, as well as the United Health Group CEO Andrew Whitty's video that he made about the response to this whole thing. So to be clear, Brian Thompson was the CEO of United's insurance division. Andrew Whitty is the CEO of United Health Group.
I'm sure everybody has been disturbed by the amount of negative and in many cases vitriolic media and commentary that has been produced over the last few days, particularly.
Yeah, I'm particularly disturbed, I'll have to say.
In the social media environment.
Yeah, mean words are so much more disturbing than an entire business model that revolves around making oodles of cash off the corpses of your clients as you knowingly deny coverage for life-saving medical treatment for those individuals that have been paying you for so long for the single purpose of you stepping in to help in an emergency situation. Then when that unfortunate time arises, it's just crickets and radio silence and then like a giant stamp of denied from United. Here's a nice little graph that helps showcase how efficient these health insurance providers have become at denying your claims. And United Healthcare, they got it down to a science. They are way out in front. They got the gold medal with 33% denied claims. To put that into Fortnite terms, United is grittying to a fucking winner chicken dinner dubski as you and your loved ones are dying. It's no surprise why people hate health insurance. It's not a political issue like a lot of people are trying to make it. You can see some of the usual suspects on YouTube saying things like, oh, the lefties are celebrating the death of this healthcare CEO, an innocent man just looking to put food on the table for his families. And if you look at the comments, it doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, everyone has been fucked equally by health insurance. They are the Thanos level threat to human beings' survival. Everybody knows somebody, and you may even be the victim yourself, that has been denied by their health insurance provider because the whole purpose of the health insurance business model is you pay them for a long period of time to do a single task for you, which is help in an emergency situation, and their goal is to find ways out of doing that task you pay them for.
You know, the funny thing to me isn't that we've come to this point where people resent the fact that their healthcare is commodified. The funny thing to me is how long it's taken to get there, how easily we've accepted that healthcare, that housing, that food, that all these things that are necessities for human life we just resigned them to like, oh no, that's okay. That's something that I pay for. And if I have a lot of money, I get some good healthcare. If I don't have a lot of money, I am lucky to get any healthcare.
To fuck you in the face. Literally just let people croak because they don't want to pay the money to cover those procedures that could save someone's life. They make money off normal people dying, and normal people are paying them for the service. It is so fucked up.
And I want to reassure you of a few things. Firstly, we are going to continue.
Is this man an alien? Like there's maybe it's like the lens that he's using or something, or it just doesn't seem, it seems like it's like, this is like from outer space. He's like out of touch.
To make sure that we put patients,
it's like ground control to Major Tom,
consumers and members first, as we always have done.
What? Pardon? I must not have heard him right. There's no way Mr. Krabs just tried to sit there with a straight face looking like my wrinkled nutsack saying that you
didn't have to self-report, Charlie.
United has always put members, consumers, and patients first. What? I mean, oh, maybe he meant like putting them first in the ground after they deny the life-saving medical treatment that they were looking for. Maybe that's what he meant. I'm not entirely sure, but there's no way he actually tried to say that United puts the patients first, right? There's no way. I mean, you could just look at the data. 33% of all claims being denied? Like, in what universe does he think anyone's going to believe that? Everybody has been affected by this. It's not like this is some big secret. Everyone knows how fucking foul
that's just his face. I was talking about the nutsack, but okay.
Industry is, and United is the worst offender. Like here, I'll give you actual footage of the United CEO anytime one of its clients die after a denied claim. Man, I just broke that.
Damn.
Man, look what you made me do, Andrew. Look what you made me do.
The mission of
what did he step on, his glasses?
this company is truly to make sure that we help.
Oh, because I was making fun of him and saying he looks like an alien? No, he just vibes like a like I feel like he's talking to us from space.
The system improve.
Like this is another
by helping the experience for individuals get better and better.
Mission failed then, Andrew, in the biggest possible way. And the response that you're seeing to all this should be a pretty clear indication that every single human being on the planet that has been cursed with United health insurance coverage feels that the experience has only gotten worse.
Now they're using AI to deny claims. People are literally dying. Yeah.
Worse and worse and worse and worse and worse as you have made more.
You don't even want to pay people to deny your claim anymore.
More and more and more and more and more doubloons off of denying claims. Hey, real quick, Andrew, can you go ahead and put on your reading glasses and take a peek at this for me? Look at this chart and tell me exactly whose experience has been getting better? Because it's not the normal American that has to have health insurance. It seems more like it might just be United Health Group itself. I'll quickly take a moment to play in the pig pen and tackle the most brain dead that are trying to justify or defend the health insurance companies. Like, I couldn't imagine anything more pathetic than doing free PR for health insurance of all things, but there are those absolute worms out there.
Tracy Eva says he's in his bunker. I mean, that's it. That's it. He's just completely
trenches right now. I see a lot of people making the comparison that in health insurance,
he's just attached.
Insurance provider denying a claim is not the same as killing someone. It's fundamentally doing that. If someone's coming to their health insurance that they've been paying for how many years?
It's not killing someone. It's not like killing someone. It's like killing lots of people.
Are looking for coverage
systemically
for a very expensive medical procedure, and they say no, and that person dies because they no longer could afford that medical procedure that would have saved their life, then that is the insurance provider fundamentally killing that person. And the comparison that some of the pseudo-intellectual enlightened super dweebs on Twitter are comparing it to is saying like, oh, well, if someone needs a kidney and you're not on the kidney donor list so you don't give them a kidney, did you murder that person? Shouldn't even really need to explain why that's absolute dog shit, but I'll go ahead and do it anyway. Was that person paying you for years and years with the sole purpose of you donating that kidney to them should they need it? Probably not. They weren't a client or anything like that. Like, not being a kidney donor is completely different than being a health insurance provider who is paid for a sole task, and then they do everything they can to not do that task. And then when someone dies as a result of their refusal to do that task they have been paid for, that is the health insurance provider having a big hand in that person's demise. Another pretty obvious difference here is that giving a kidney is an extremely big deal. Like, that is a risky thing to the person who does it. Whereas in health insurance, the only risk in paying for someone's medical procedure is that your shareholders might not get as many millions of dollars because now you might actually have to start doing what people are paying you for. If there is a chance that United Health paying for a medical procedure means they can't afford to pay for someone else's, then they shouldn't be in business in the fucking first place. It means they're trash at what they're supposed to be doing. They're being paid by everyone to do this task of covering their medical procedures when they need it. And if they can't afford to do that, they should not be around.
They should be managing risk between, many enough people where
Nobody who did more to try and advance that mission than Brian Thompson. And there are very few people in the history of the US healthcare industry who had a bigger positive effect on American healthcare than Brian.
Hey, come back to reality. Andrew.
That's what I was saying.
You're fading into Narnia right
now. He's fading into outer space.
What are you talking about, man? Making tens of millions of dollars at a company that leads the nation in denied health insurance claims is not pushing the industry in any positive direction for normal Americans, man.
And we are going to make sure that we not only acknowledge and honor that legacy of Brian, but we will continue it.
That's right, everyone. We are going to be pushing for 50% denied claims next year in honor of this mission.
Got to make it more efficient.
It's a lofty goal, but I think we can deny even more claims come 2025. So mark your calendars. 2025 is United's year. We're making history. Half of all claims will be denied. Mark my words. Like, this isn't something you get excited about, man. The mission has just been growing your profits while denying more claims. So you proudly announcing that you're going to be continuing that mission is about as painful as you coming out and saying that you're going to continue waterboarding me. Like, why would I be pumping my fist about that? The only one that gets excited there is your shareholders.
Our role is a critical role, and we make sure that care is safe, appropriate, and is delivered when people need it. And we guard against the pressures that exist for unsafe care or for unnecessary care to be delivered in a way which makes the whole system too complex and ultimately unsustainable.
What is sustainable, though, is all of that growth United keeps experiencing. That's what really matters. We need to make sure that is sustained. This is garbage, man. This is actual just baloney. He's just blabbering about nothing. It's a yappuccino trying to spin this as like them trying to do something good. It's not. What Andrew and his company deem unnecessary care is completely unreasonable oftentimes, where it is very necessary for the patient to stay alive. Well, we denied this claim because we felt it was unnecessary, because we did a cost-benefit analysis and we concluded that the patient was going to die in 60 years anyway, so what's really the point in spending all this money to keep them alive now when they're just going to kick the bucket in, a couple of decades?
So we're going to continue to make that case. We will continue to do the work.
Wait, is he recording this on a BlackBerry? Yeah, I don't know.
And I have never been more proud of this company and our colleagues and what this company does on behalf of people in need across the country.
You would really think, with what happened here, someone like Andrew, and I don't believe that he's even really human anymore. I believe he has sold his soul many years ago and is just this hollow husk that's only filled with money. But you would still think at some point the neurons would fire in his noodle and he'd see this response and be like, that mission, about helping people, kind of failed at that, didn't we? Maybe we should do something different. But he hasn't even had that realization. Or maybe he has and he just doesn't care, which is the more likely explanation. But you would just truly think that the reality would set in like, oh, people fucking hate us. People are awake to how exploitative we are and how we are actively making their lives harder.
I encourage you to tune out that critical noise that we're hearing right now. It does not reflect reality. It is simply a sign of an era in which we live.
Great advice. All those people talking about how corrupt this industry is, yes, please plug your ears to that so that way you don't actually hear from the victims of our business model. We don't want you to start feeling sympathy for the numbers on our bottom line, all right? We need to make sure that we don't look at them as anything real. They're just imaginary NPCs for our money, and we like that money, don't we? It's just so crazy. It's so crazy. He's saying that it doesn't reflect reality. Brother, that is the reality. These are your clients.
They're like, no, the numbers are really good. You don't understand. You don't understand. The numbers look really good for us. This isn't a bad thing. We're doing healthcare, which is good. People need healthcare, right? And we're making a shit ton of money. We got really good at making money. We figured out the way that if we deny more claims than anybody else, we make more money than anybody else. We're doing really good. We're doing really good.
That are coming out and sharing their experiences. It doesn't get...
Isn't that fucked up how the better they do, the worse you do? Doesn't that kind of suck as a way of doing things? Where you're up against somebody with more power than you, whose needs, whose interests are diametrically opposed to your own. Doesn't that suck? Isn't that an unfair game? If that was a game, a tabletop game, would you keep playing that shit? Or would you say, I don't like this game. Let's play another game. This one's called Seize the Means of Production.
Any more real than that, as opposed to your fucking barnacles that you're vomiting out here. That is the fraudulent fakeness. The reality is that people have been fucked by your health insurance company and plenty of others. The industry is rotten to its very core, and people know that, which is why...
And it's not the only industry either. You'd be hard-pressed to find an industry that's not corrupted. People think that capitalism is about free markets. Capitalism destroys free markets. Capitalism destroys competition. It disrupts competition and then raises the price after the competition is gone.
political issue of left and right. Everyone is united in how hard they have been.
Everyone is united in being against the healthcare industry. That's United Healthcare. There we go, chat. United Healthcare. There's the meaning.
Seen people be affected negatively by this industry, and this guy just refuses to let that set in, and he's trying to brainwash his employees to just be numb to it and pay no attention to it.
What we must do is focus on what we know to be true. And what we know to be true is that the health system needs a company like United Health Group, and it needs people like Brian within it. We're fortunate that within this company, we have so many people driven and inspired in the same way that Brian was, and we will continue in our journey to help everybody who needs it.
I'm sorry, our journey to hell? Is that did you say, our journey to hell?
Within the health environment.
It's just crazy. I know I don't need to keep ranting about it, but it actually does just blow my
You kind of do, though.
mind that he would even say things like that, which are so provably false. It's honestly like almost a threat that they have plenty of other people like Brian in the company that are as inspired as Brian and focusing on what Brian was focusing on, which is clearly the profits in the company and denying more claims so they can make more money. That's a bad thing. And he's just talking about it like it's an accolade to be super proud of and something to be excited about. It's just frightening. It's actually just frightening. So yeah, I wanted to rant about health insurance a little bit. That's it.
All right, there you go. Moist Critical. You all know him. So we're going to continue the stream on the full scale stream. If you're watching me on shorts, the short stream is going to end, but the stream will go on. I've got it pinned for you up on the pinned comment, so I'm going to end this stream. But if you want to join us, and we're going to be, I think, doing some bonus content after that. It looks like it might be Bad Empanada ending Loanerbox's career. That's what's ahead right now. Of course, things could change, but yeah, feel free to join us. Feel free to click on the pinned comment there, and I will see you on the flip side.